Hello, guys, and welcome to the Legendary Ladies podcast. And today we're doing a duo episode between me and Morgan. And
Hello.
we are talking about the Netflix movie Hitman. I'm also sorry if my voice sounds really raspy. I just did a pride all weekend and I'm tired, but I'm here to talk about Hitman. How about you, Morgan? Did you first of all, did you hear? I only heard about this movie because I saw it getting good reviews, and I do like Glen Powell as an actor, but other than that, I didn't. I just knew it was a new Netflix movie. I didn't really hear. I didn't really
Yeah,
know what it was about.
I had heard of it, because I had seen some buzz that it was a good movie, and I feel like Glen Powell is, like, having a real moment right
A
now. It's like
renaissance.
the Glen Powell-assance or whatever, which is great because I love him, and I watched him way, way back in the day on Scream Queens. Did you ever watch
Oh
that show, Kat?
wow!
And I thought that he was the best part of Scream Queens, and I remember watching that show being like, "The guy is really funny, like, this show is a mess, but the guy is really funny." Like, he was like, kinda stole every scene he was in. So when all of a
I
sudden he
saw the
started, like,
pilot of that show.
yeah,
Was he
it
in the pilot or?
I can't remember if he was in the pilot. He, like, played, like, one of their, one of the girls' boyfriends. I think it was maybe Emma Roberts' character,
Hmm.
her boyfriend or something, and he was, like, really, like, into himself and, like, kind of a dumb jock, but he was really, really funny. So when he started popping up in all over the place. I was like, "Yeah, it's the funny guy from Scream Queens." Like, I'm glad he's having his moment. I'm glad he's breaking out, but he does seem to be kind of everywhere recently. So I was like, "Oh, what's this one about?" And I think I might have even watched like a little bit of a trailer or something, and I was like, "Oh, that could be fun." So we had actually already kind of planned to watch it when it came out. So when
Hmm.
we started talking about what we should talk about, I was like, well, great. I was already planning on watching that movie. But yeah, I feel like
Yeah,
there's been some buzz about it, but it's tough because I feel like the Netflix movies, are a
they're
little
hard
bit
to promote.
harder to promote. Now, this one I think possibly is also in theaters right now.
Oh, is it?
Um,
I didn't even know that.
I feel like Netflix is doing this thing recently where they'll, like, release the movie in theaters, but for,
They
like, a
do. With
very
Knives Out, they
short.
did it.
Yeah, like,
Mhm.
for, like, a very short, like, almost ridiculous amount of time where it'll be, like, in the theaters, but it'll be in the theaters for, like, 2 weeks, uh, presumably just so that they can, like, qualify for award stuff, I think is why it
Mm.
does that,
This
but,
gotta get an award for sure.
yeah, but, yeah, I see that it's in theaters. Now, the closest theater to me is in Philadelphia, which
Oh,
isn't
wow.
particularly close to me, so if I wanted to see it, I would have to, like, really travel far and wide, but it is
Yeah, it looks like
technically in
mine's
theaters.
Brooklyn. Yeah,
Yeah,
Brooklyn, New York.
so it's, one of those select theaters. It's not nationwide. It's like it might be out around you, but you might have to travel for it.
Far and wide.
You might have to go a little bit further to see this one in theaters.
Yeah, maybe just see it, on Netflix,
I mean, it's
but
on Netflix right now, so, I mean, if you are committed to seeing, Glen Powell on the big screen as he should be seen, you can go to a theater. Otherwise, it's available on your couch.
I remember Knives Out, they did a thing where they released it, like, a few weeks earlier, and that was cool in
Yeah.
theaters 'cause it's like, "Oh, then, like, there's a reason to go to theaters."
And I feel like the double-sided, thing to that is that it, like, started to develop buzz, because I remember when it came out in theaters, I was hearing a lot about it, like, people were talking about it, like, there was, like, a lot of Twitter conversation about, like, Knives Out, and I was like, "Oh, I wanna see this movie."
Mhm.
Whereas and then when it, like, finally hit Netflix or, like, the streamers, I can't remember, is that a Netflix? Was Knives Out was Netflix, right? Oh, I think Cat might have frozen. Uh,
I'm
uh?
good now, I think, but,
Okay,
yeah, it
good.
was Netflix.
Yeah, yeah, once
There
it
you go.
hit Netflix, I feel like it really
Yeah, it
blew
was
up
Netflix.
because there had been so much, like, pre-conversation about people who had gone to see it in theaters, whereas this one, the strategy of releasing it in the theaters and then on streaming at the same time doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah.
Well, especially for a movie like this, that I don't think it's like And we'll talk about it. Like I like the movie,
Yeah.
but it's not like, again, a groundbreaking. It's not an Oscar award winning movie. But Knives Out, I think it is a little bit more of like a franchisey thing, and there's like a lot of buzz you can have around it. But this is like more of a, I almost want to say a feel good movie in a
Yeah.
way. Obviously, there's some drama in it. It really, one thing that when I was watching it, what it really reminded me of was maybe an elevated procedural. It felt like a television show
Yes,
more
actually,
than a movie.
it's so funny that you said that because I saw like a tweet, I think yesterday, that was like, I want to watch this as a television show. Like, I want to
Mhm.
watch Hitman as a television show. I thought to myself, yeah, I also kind of would want to watch this as a TV show. In some ways, I feel like it would maybe even would have worked a little bit better as a TV
I
show.
agree. Because
Than
then there's
because
like
there were.
setup. Like it feels like a
Mhm.
CBS show. It feels like a network
It
television show.
does, which again, like we talked about in our NCIS Hawaii episode, like sit me in front of a good procedural and I will be happy. Like I feel like this could have been a really fun procedural. Like even if it was like a streaming procedural that has like, 2 episodes or whatever the
Mm.
streaming shows are doing now, but like yeah, I could have like watched an 8-episode streaming show about him pretending to be various hitmen because the movie does have that sort of vignette
Mhm.
period where it's showing like this hitman guy and this hitman guy. And I was like, I feel like each of these stories could have been their own like 42-minute episode.
And there's parts where, because I think, a big thing about this movie is that I think the script is just okay, but I think Glenn Powell does such a good job that it's like, oh, I'm entertained because he plays the other characters really well. But also, one thing that kind of bothers me with the script of this one is that the relationship, I'm glad they had chemistry because on paper it's such a weird relationship where
Yes.
she's trying to kill people, or at least her husband, not on purpose though, and she's like a bad person. He's an honestly decent person. Like he has a weird job, but like he's a decent guy. So it's just like, oh, this is like, I don't understand why. Like I guess in the end it's like, oh, he gets outside of his comfort zone, he becomes a better person because of it. But I'm like, I wasn't rooting
Did
for them to
he?
get together. I mean, he's supposedly, because he's like, oh, now I'm like a new person. He's making, like, he doesn't wear the glasses anymore as a professor, like in the end of the movie.
Now he's just a hot professor.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think like well, so the premise of the movie for anyone who hasn't watched it, but for some reason is listening to this podcast, is that he is like a college professor, and he also works at at his like a police station where he was doing like I don't know some sort of data stuff, and then they throw him into the field pretending to be a hitman.
Randomly,
Yeah, pretending to be a hitman, like for a murder for hire thing, and then it turns out he's really good at it. He's really good at like
because of like
coming
the
up with these.
psychology.
Yeah, because of the psychology, which is what he taught, and coming up with these like personas to be like the hitmen that people expect him to be. And then it kind of goes through, and then he meets this girl who wants to kill her husband, and he kind of talks her out of it. And then they eventually have a romance, and things get a little wacky from there. But I would think I would agree that the two actors had really, really good chemistry, which ended up papering over how, like, on paper, there's not a lot to that romance, and there's not a
Or
lot to
even
make you
to this
care
movie.
about the romance. Yeah. Like, I thought to myself, like, oh, I guess it's in some ways it's kind of a rom-com, but like a rom-com in which I don't really care whether or not the two main characters get together, and also
Mhm.
kind of feel like maybe they shouldn't. Like, maybe
Yeah,
truly
definitely
they
shouldn't.
shouldn't.
Yeah, no, I don't think, again, yeah, I don't think they made each other better people, and it ends, I don't want to say abruptly, but it ends in a weird spot where
I
he
I
kills
didn't think
this
that was the
man.
ending.
Yeah, and then also the kids. Yeah, the kids
Yeah.
situation where it's just like now they have kids and they're hiding this secret, but everything's normal, and it's just like, again, because it's a weird movie, because from the first 30 minutes I thought it was a little slow, because it's just like, all right, we get these different personalities kind of thrown into this thing that he probably wasn't should have been thrown at. But then Glen Powell just becomes so likable throughout the movie, and like his monologue is interesting enough about how you change as a person and this in ego and super ego situation. Or I'm like, okay, like, is this the best movie of the year? No, but it's charming enough, and like it kind of wins me over. And like I think it's a really good background movie, like if you're doing other things and if you're not thinking about it too much. And it's a weird movie because it's just like I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it. And I was like, is it because of the genre? Is it because of the script? I don't know.
I thought it was really fun. I thought it had some questions and like themes about like human
Mhm.
behavior and stuff like that. But I did find the tone of it a little bit off. I don't
Because
know
is it a
how to
comedy? Is it not?
I think that's the thing. It's like it's kind of a comedy, but it's not a kind of also not a comedy. Like some of the moments are very funny, but then suddenly they're in like a more of a it almost feels like okay, now you're in a kind of a romance, but I never felt like I really cared that much about the romance storyline. I feel like usually if you're in like a rom-com or a romance, like they work really hard to get you to want the two characters to be together and like root for the two characters. And I do think that there were some like cute moments with the two of them, but nothing that ever made me go like this isn't a good like this is straightforwardly a bad idea and like I don't think that you should be doing this. And I don't think I ever overcame that. And I also never felt like the movie wanted you to quite be like, I want you to root for these two crazy kids despite, how like the crazy way in which they met. It felt like the movie was also like, no, this is bad. So that's why I think for
Yeah,
me,
I think
the happy ending felt jarring almost, where it was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay. And then we're just happily ever after. And now we're out.
I think the strongest element, obviously taking away from Glenn's performance, is probably the drama that's built up towards the end. That's something I did enjoy, like between the other cop, but then it also did feel so TV showish, where it's like, oh, there's this bad
Yeah.
cop and he's going against him, and it's just like, oh, I liked it, but it also just felt, I guess, another thing jarring. It just didn't feel it doesn't feel like a movie. And I'm curious if it was supposed to be a show. And then also what was interesting about the end is learning it was based on a real person,
So,
but also like they
yeah.
made it fake.
I thought that was super interesting, and I was so interested in that aspect of it that I
Mhm.
went and I looked up the article which this movie was based off of. It was a Texas Monthly article by an author named Skip Hollandsworth about the real guy. So Gary Johnson is a real guy. He did pretend to be a hitman. I think the article was from 2001, so it's pretty old. But at that point, he had put away like 60 people in these hitman schemes in Houston. So the movie makes it Louisiana, but he actually was operating out of Houston. And a lot of the details in the movie are actually straight from the article. So he has two cats named Id and Ego. He, sort of lives alone. He is sort of the quintessential character from the beginning of the movie. He was also a college professor a couple days a week, and he did teach like psychology classes. Some of the actual cases that are mentioned in the article are in the movie, like
That's
the
cool.
lady who tries to give him the boat as payment, like the kid who tries to pay him in like video games. That was also in the article. And then the article actually ends with an anecdote where you could, like, as you're reading it, having seen the movie, you're like, oh, that's where they got the idea for the movie, because the article ends with like somebody had reached out to him for the hitman services, but he looked into her background and found out she was like an actual victim of domestic abuse. And instead of trying to, nail her for the hitman thing, he got her into like services and got her help so that she could get out of the abusive situation. So you could see how somebody would read that article and think, okay, like you get to the end and you're like, ooh, and there could be a romance in this movie, right? Like from that from a lot of what's funny is that a lot of the stuff in the movie is very real to like what this real guy's life was, but the rest but then they kind of took it and then the whole romance storyline was absolutely just like taken from the end of that article and expanded.
But they also don't try to pretend like it is fully a real
No.
story, which I appreciated because I was
At
just
the
like,
end,
oh, it's cool that
they
it's
did say,
based
like,
on
he
it.
never killed
Mhm.
anybody, which I thought was very funny.
Yeah, and I think I wish more like biographical movies did that because I think that's cool. I also because obviously I didn't know anything about this movie. I didn't know what the woman's role was going to be, but I thought it was going to be more interesting than it was. I thought maybe she was going to be like she was going to be a real hitman or like she was going to be like I don't know. Just I think there was something more. There could have been something more interesting with that character than what they end up doing with her, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that the sort of the female character in this one, whose name I honestly don't even remember,
They said it a lot too. I
they
don't
said it a
remember though. I
lot, and
feel like
I
some with an
have
M.
yeah, I think you're right. Um, but yeah, I did feel like there wasn't I don't know, like, her character was a little bit under oh, she was, Madison. I felt like she was a little bit underdeveloped in terms of, like, what was going on with
Everything
her, and yeah, exactly, like,
because you don't
I
see
got
it.
you don't really see it, like, you get little glimpses, you do eventually meet her, you know, abusive husband, you see kind of like that he is a real jerk and that he is a bad guy, but you don't get a lot of backstory on her, and I think, that's some of that in the movie is by design because he keeps on saying to her, like, "We have to keep this casual, like, I won't tell you anything about myself, you don't have to tell me anything about yourself." But I think what that results in is because you're with Glen Powell's character, you do know about him, but because he tells her, like, "We can't tell each other anything about our lives," you end up knowing nothing about her, like, she's kind of a ghost in the movie.
But also, even going back to we knew a lot about him. I don't think there was ever a moment scripting wise where he was a really interesting character. Because again, the beginning of the movies, he lives alone and he has all these cats and he's a professor. Cool, I guess. You get a little monologue, but there's never a moment where I'm like, wow, he's really funny or this is a great character. It's like, again, acting wise, I think he was a fun character, but story wise, it I never really fell in love with anybody, which is hard when you watch these type of movies, or at least for me, I like a good character movie. And I know not everyone liked this movie, but The Killer on Netflix is a good example of a not a similar movie, but
Mhm.
it's a hitman movie. But I felt like I was in that guy's head the whole entire time. I understood what he was doing. It was a Michael Fassbender movie. And I like that one a lot more because I just felt like it was more of a character piece and it was more about like how do people work and the whole movie is about this guy, hitman, and he's a sniper. Like he has to be perfect, right? Oh, did I my pause? I
Oh,
think I
no,
paused for a
you're okay.
second. Let's see. I think I
I
did.
think you're okay. I think you're okay. I think it did pause for a
Did
second, but I heard you the whole time though.
oh
Can you hear me though? I guess is
did I
the
pause?
question.
I could hear you now. I could
Okay,
hear
good,
you.
good.
Can you hear
I
me?
think you could
Okay.
yeah, I could hear
Uh
you. I could hear you the whole time, by the way. I think it was just
okay, good,
this
good,
like a
good.
syncing issue, yeah.
So I'm glad you heard me because I was yeah going back to the Michael Fassbender thing. I think it was interesting to see that it was more about him being perfect as a sniper, but every single time you saw him be imperfect and just be like, oh well, he did this wrong while he was on this case, and it just was really interesting in that way. And I don't think there was ever that moment for this movie where I was like, wow, that made him a really interesting character. I think maybe the monologue came a little close because at least you got to see like, oh man, he's changing as a person. It really proves the point of psychology, but it just never really got to a point where I was like, wow, I love this character. And I think that's also another question about this movie as a whole. Is this the streaming movie of the week or will it last, a year or two? I feel like it just seems like one of those movies that everyone's going to forget in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think that is a big question. It's one of the real downsides I think of the streaming model is that they don't, they minimally market these movies and they kind of come out on streaming and then they kind of just disappear in what feels like a second. Honestly, I can't think of many of the streaming movies that have come out and made like a huge impact. So I wouldn't be surprised if like nobody remembers or talks about this movie in a couple of months. I think it's been getting really good reviews, and the
Mhm.
director is somebody I've heard of before. It was I think Richard Linklater, and
What
he's
did he direct?
Richard. I had heard of his name, and I knew I had seen some stuff by him. So he has done.
I hope
He
you're looking on
did
Letterbox.
Oh, no, I'm actually just Googling. But he did, all the, like, the before movies, so Before Sunset, Before Sunrise, Before Midnight. He did
Mm.
Boyhood, that movie
He did
where it
Boyhood. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, which is I mean, that movie was crazy because they
It's
followed
also
the
very different than
very
this.
different. Yeah, let's see, he did School of Rock, um,
Also very different.
very different. Yeah, so he's done he did Dazed and Confused in the '90s, so
Mm.
he's done a lot of different movies. Not all of them, are I mean, a lot of them are just very, very different from each other, which is cool to see in, like, a director's, uh, filmography and stuff like that, but so it's not like a, sort of a no name director doing one of these things. It is like a pretty well-known director taking this Netflix movie. But yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that they wouldn't try to push it a little bit more in the cinematic, like, take it to the theaters and, like, let it breathe in the theaters for a while before dropping it on Netflix.
Yeah, and it goes back to I wonder how do you make it memorable? Maybe it is a theater experience. Like one of these things about this movie, I feel like it'll be someone's favorite movie who likes this type of genre, and I could see someone rewatching it a lot. But I just don't know if it's gonna ever pick up steam past that. Is it gonna be a cult favorite? Is it gonna? It just see. I mean, Damsel's a great example, which obviously we actually disliked. I don't dislike this movie, but like does anyone talk about it now? And I think that's the problem with streaming in general. It's like you're pushing something so quickly, and it's just how do you, and there's so much content, how do you make anything feel important? But then you get like things like The Boys or the Bear, which is more TV shows. I think movies, I'm trying to think if there's a movie that was on streaming that people were like, wow. I guess Knives Out, when they got Knives
Yeah,
Out,
I
Glass
guess,
Onion.
like, yeah, Glass Onion because even the original Knives Out, I feel like, was in the theaters for a while and
That
people saw it in theaters.
it was in I think Netflix got Knives Out after the first movie. So Glass Onion
Yes,
was the
oh, that's
only.
right.
Yeah, so Knives Out, the first one, got a
Because
fan base because of the theater.
I think I saw the first one in theaters, actually.
Mhm,
So, yeah, Glass Onion, I know that did, really well on Netflix, but, yeah,
mhm,
you could argue that's because a lot of people went to the theaters and went to go see it, and
mhm.
it was like a continuation of a franchise. I don't know that Netflix has really launched any like,
Anything.
in any movie that wasn't, like, hinged on something, like, that was a property that already existed. Because 'cause I'm thinking of, like, some of their rom-coms have been really cute and, good, like, but, like, To All the Boys I've Loved Before, those kinda movies,
Mhm.
but those were based off of books, so there was, like, an existing fan base in there. This is a really kind of a new, um, experiment in the way that, this really is just based on a Texas Monthly article from 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I just wonder if these movies can and it goes back to like, why don't you make original movies? And it's just like you wish they were in theaters, but there's not enough room for them in theaters. Like there's a movie with Rachel Sennett I really really want to go see. It's called like, let me see if I can find it.
Oh, I think I saw is that, like, Michelle Buteau is the other person in the movie? Or I might be thinking of
I,
a completely different movie.
the movie let me look on my phone though I don't ruin my internet. It
Oh,
is I Used to Be Funny.
okay, yeah, no, I'm thinking of a completely different movie. But,
And
yeah,
it looks
that's
good. It's like an independent film, and even Bottoms, which is actually a very popular movie. I love that movie. It was one of my favorites when it came out. Um, it was in
that
theaters
movie was
first.
wild.
It's just one of my favorite comedies in such a long
So
time.
funny.
I love that movie. Guys should watch Bottoms if you haven't. But yeah, that's a good movie of something that was really original, came out in theaters and somehow got fire. But I think it was because people are like Rachel Sennett fans, and she is known for doing independent films. People are IO fans, and she's obviously known for being a good comedian. So I think there's also has to be like a perfect wind. But there is like, I wish the independent movie could do better. The thing that's not related to IP, but then like a Hitman, where this is related to an article that no one probably clicked on. It's not a popular article. It's not a
I also
Florida
don't
Man
think, like
article.
yeah, I think that, like, even if it was a popular article in its time, like, that the article is published in 2001, right? So we're talking
Wow.
20 plus years later. I don't think people aren't gonna be like, "Write that art." It's not like, all the stuff that was that Hulu show about the Gypsy Rose that was based off of that,
Mhm.
like the BuzzFeed article, like the Mommy Dead and Dearest stuff. Like I feel like that, but that happened pretty shortly after the article and all the true crime news
Sure.
came out. Whereas like this is like, yeah, that's 20 years later that this is coming out. So if people had read the article back in 2001, I know my memory is not good enough to be like, oh yeah, didn't I read this in a magazine 20 years ago? I don't think that people are going to be like, yeah, I gotta see this one.
Or it would have to be viral because I mean, like I'm
Hmm.
thinking of like Balloon Boy, right? Balloon Boy was
Oh
like
my god,
15
Balloon
years ago,
Boy!
but we all
I
know
still
Balloon
remember
Boy.
Balloon Boy. Yeah.
Yeah, and so if you made a movie about that, maybe I'd watch it because I'd be like, oh yeah, I am curious about what they would do with a Balloon Boy story, and what it means about media or whatever. But yeah, and I think that, but that's the hardship. Is like if this was in theaters, this would never would have succeeded. Even with Glen Powell, I don't think this would have been able to succeed. I don't, because how do you sell it? I guess because like okay, I think obviously Glenn Powell sells rom coms. He did with anybody but you. But can he
Yeah.
sell this movie? I don't know because I think there's a lot of parts that are very generic. How do you sell this movie as a trailer? It's like, oh, he's pretending to be a hitman. Cool, I guess it's a comfort movie in any way.
I kind of feel like the movie in some places I wasn't sure what the movie wanted to be. Did the movie want to be like an
Thoughtful.
action adventure? Did it want to be thoughtful? Did it want to be a comedy? Did it want to be a romance? There were honest. Did it want to be a dark comedy? Like there were a lot of parts in there where like the tone would really shift throughout the movie, which I think is really cool. But it does make it kind of hard to pin down in terms of like as you're watching it, you're like, what are we going what exact tone are we going for?
Yeah, and I think I don't know if that's a movie issue. I don't think it's a promotion issue because again,
No.
I didn't really they weren't selling me on anything. And
Netflix also, Netflix, I feel like, kinda barely promotes I mean, probably they have sent Glenn Powell out, as their
they have.
sacrificial
I've
lamb
seen them a lot.
to do a lot of press, but, besides that, I feel like they're not there hasn't been a big push. I don't watch, although, again, I don't watch a lot of TV, so maybe there have been commercials for it all over the place that I have just missed, but I
No, I
do
don't
feel
think
like
you have though. And
no.
also Netflix should be promoting on the internet. That's where they're gonna get their audience
Really
more
true, it's
than
really true.
TV. But I don't think they have. I mean, again, I'm not the biggest TV watcher either, so I can't tell you, but it doesn't seem like it would. But like you said, I think they, he did like a Hot Ones tour type thing. Not that I'm saying he did Hot Ones, although he
He
should if
should
he
do
has
hot
it.
ones.
I would love to see that. But I've definitely seen some viral clips of him. I saw a clip the other day where he's on a podcast, I think, and he was talking about like his sister's friend went out with this guy once. And did
Oh,
you did you
yes,
hear about this
I
story? No.
video was sent to my group chat, about yeah, what did she like? She went out with this guy, and he kinda creeped her out, and then he was like,
Yeah.
he gave her like a
Want
back
massage
rub
or
or
something?
something,
Yeah.
and what how did it and then
So
it was
if there was something in the oil that was being
yeah.
used, and it was oil that he was going to eat her,
Yeah,
and
it breaks
then
down breaks
yeah,
down your flesh for consumption or something I
it's
this
crazy.
sounds like an urban legend to me, by the way, Glenn Powell, like, did this happen to a friend of a friend?
Technically, it did. Sister's friend.
Yes, I was like, there's no way this is real, like, it's just yeah, do they really make lotions that break down? Like, I don't know, it sounded a little bit I was like, I personally need this to not be real.
No, I don't want it to be real by any means. But yeah, no, I thought, that's how they've been kind of selling this movie
Yeah,
is on him. And I just been seeing his face a lot. So and again, me and you saw the same clip on social
exactly,
media. So
yes,
I guess
so
they're like, we should
it's
watch
working.
Hitman because we like
Yeah.
Glenn. Yeah, I do think he's a likable actor. And that's something I was very interested in here was just how versatile he was. I'm like, oh, I wish you were in a better movie because like you did play all these different characters and like just changing the makeup a little bit. You're like, wow, I didn't recognize him. And like it shows like, oh, I would like to see him in a really good movie that wasn't this. And again, this is not a bad movie. I just
Yeah.
don't think it was a great movie.
Yeah, I liked this movie. I really enjoyed it while I was watching it. I did think it would have played a little bit I think I would have enjoyed it more as like a TV show where you could dive into these
Mhm.
wacky characters that he was playing for more
Or
than
not
like
take it as seriously either, because a procedure would
yeah.
be like, "Cool, I get to see the crime of the week and turn it
Mhm.
off," you know?
Exactly, and, like, he was playing all these different versions of Hitman, like, the different kind of Hitman that a particular person would wanna see, but he was only doing that for, like, a minute or 2 of screen time, and then it would, like, switch to the next one. I could have watched probably another 10 minutes of him pretending to be Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. I thought that was so funny
That
when
was
he showed up
great.
at the door. I said, "What is he, Patrick Bateman now?" And then like, in the subtitles, it was, like, doing a Patrick Bateman impression, and I was like, "Yes, I called it."
I didn't watch the subtitles, that's funny.
So good. The Mike was like, "How did you know?" I was like, "I don't know." It's just, like, he had the exact suit and the hair and everything. But, yeah, I think it really showed how versatile, Glen Powell is as an actor and that I think he's just really likable. I think that some of the issues I have with the movie maybe are more about the script, but
Yeah, 100%, me too.
I don't think a lot of it is on him. I think he did a
None of
really
it
good
is.
job. Yeah, I think he did a
He made
great
this a
job.
watch he made this a watchable movie for me, because I don't if it was someone else, I don't know if it would have been as fun, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think he was really, really fun. Even when he was playing, like, in the beginning of the movie, like, the dorky Gary Johnson who, wears his shirts, tucked into his jorts. They had, like, the whole joke about his, like, weird long jean shorts that he switches with the other guy in the police van, and I thought that was really funny. I do feel like I don't know, I have some questions about the way the movie ended. Like, it felt like
Mhm.
it got really dark at the end of the movie, and I wasn't sure how I felt about them taking that turn. How did you feel? I guess maybe this is like a little spoiler if you haven't seen the movie and you're gonna watch it and you don't wanna be spoiled, maybe, like, pop out for 2 minutes. But, okay, this is your warning. So, him killing the police officer with, like, her drugging him, but she didn't kill him, she just drugged him, and then him killing the police, like, like, jerky, dirty cop. I didn't know how I felt about that,
It felt like a plot device for them to get together. Because if you think about it, if the dirty cop was still around, it would have been impossible for them to be together. But honestly, it almost felt impossible anyways, because I
yeah,
guess he still wasn't working with the police, but he still had the same job. I don't
yeah,
know if he worked at the same school, but he had the same job. He seemed like he lived in the same community. So it's like, how did the police not figure out that he got with this woman? I guess you can make the coincidence that they got together later, but it's just like, there was a plot hole there, but I think the reason they killed him off was the major plot hole. Is like, if this guy's still alive, he's going to easily tell everybody what's happening. But then at the same time, why did this guy have to know? He seemed like he didn't really need
yeah,
to be there. So yeah, going back to the scripting problems.
yeah, I know that they were sort of setting up this idea of, like, the idea of why people hire hitmen and,
Hmm.
if you needed to get rid of a problem, like, at what point are you pushed to do something like that? And, like, it was very
Love.
love. And the movie was very interested in, like, human behavior and things like that. But I don't know if it for me, I'm not sure if it quite earned that turn for
Hmm.
his character where suddenly he was willing to kill someone. I know that we sort of see some, scenes of him in the classroom talking about, what would have happened in ancient times if you didn't have a legal system and like, the kids being like, well, I guess we'd have to like execute him. And it was like thematically it was building up to him making that choice. I just felt like I was just like a little bit lukewarm on it. Like I was like, "Oh, okay, so now we're killing somebody." And then at the end, it felt like they just kind of move on and they have a happily ever after and that's it. And so I was really interested in like, okay, like what I don't know. It made it, I guess it was kind of a thinker for me because I was like, what am I supposed to take from that?
No, for sure, and I think it's also interesting. It's like, would this movie ever get a sequel? Probably not. Even if it was popular, like, where do you go from that? But no, I agree. I think it was just very uneven in that way. But yeah, let's I mean, I think we talked a lot about the full movie. Any other thoughts on it? I guess, do you recommend it to people? Who do you recommend it to?
Oh, that's a good question. I
Mm.
think I would recommend it to people. I would say, like, I feel like I would need to caveat it that it's like, it's not really a rom-com.
No.
It might feel like it at some points, but it's not. And it's kind of wacky. I think I would tell people, it's a little wacky. You're gonna have to, like, be ready for that. It's gonna be a little bit all over the place, but I would
It's
recommend
more
it.
of an action movie, even
I feel like
without action.
yeah, there's not a ton of action, but it does have, like, kind of an action adventure
Feel.
feel to the movie versus being, like, a straight comedy or a straight rom-com or, but yeah, one of the things I did think was fun is the way that they talked about, like, hitmen, like, which is that
Mhm.
people think that hitmen are real, and they're kind of not, like, nobody's really doing this. So when you go to hire a hitman, it's mostly just, like, the police who are, like, just getting evidence to put you in jail. I thought that was really, like, a funny concept because you do see, like, hitmen in so many movies and films and
Sure.
TV shows, and this movie was like, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, they're not really real. Like, there's nobody just going around doing this as a profession. Like, maybe you could, like, pay somebody enough money to do it, but, like, that's not what they're just gonna go around doing. I thought that was kind of funny, and, like, when I read the article, that's another thing that they talk about, which is like a lot of people think that there are tons of hitmen out there, and there's just it's not. It's mostly going back to the police station.
And I think that's what's is really fun about this movie. If you love this genre of like Hitman, I think it is a love letter to those movies in some ways, but like a more realistic love letter. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
something I think if you like those movies, I haven't seen many of them if I'm being honest, which is surprising. But I've
Me
never
neither.
really seen the Hitman genre, even though I do think there's a lot of movies in within that genre.
Yeah, there are a lot of hitmen movies. I feel like I do feel like sometimes you'll be watching a movie and they'll be like, we need to wipe this guy out. Let's get a hitman. And it's like, I like that this movie was like, yeah, that's. I mean, it's not like a profession, you guys. Like, it doesn't really exist. I liked
I,
that aspect of the movie.
you get caught pretty easily,
Yeah,
especially
you
nowadays.
absolutely would. It's like, if you keep doing this over and over again, every time you do it, you, like, increase your chances of getting caught. It does sort of make sense that, like, this is probably not something that is common enough that you could find one by asking somebody you know, you know?
Right. Yeah. And yeah, no, I like the police angle of it. I never knew that. And again, I like the grounded in reality-ness of that, of like, oh cool, it's based on something that's, and we're making it a little bit more far-fetched. Who do I recommend this to? I don't know. I think the people who like procedurals, if I'm being honest, I think that's the
Yeah.
people who are gonna like it the most.
It's true, because I did really like it, honestly. I was like, if this was a little procedural that was on TV, I would watch I would eat this up. I could imagine, like, the episode where he's like he pretends to be Patrick Bateman for half the episode. I would watch that 100%.
No, for sure. I think that I wanted more episodes of that. And it's interesting because I never seen like the show Reacher. I feel like Reacher is probably that television show, but I
I
hear good things
also
about
have
it.
I also have not seen Reacher, but I feel like if you wanted to see this, but, like, with a much, much bigger guy, like a guy who's
Yes.
so big, it's, like,
Bigger
a little
budget probably.
frightening. Bigger budget, bigger man, you know? Have you seen the guy who plays Reacher in
I did,
Reacher?
yeah.
He's
He's crazy,
massive.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I saw, like, some casting news that was like, "We're gonna like, the villain for the next season of Reacher is gonna be this guy," and it was a guy who's even bigger than the Reacher
Wow.
guy. And I was like, "Aren't they gonna soon, run out of just bigger men to put in this show?"
They just need to hire The Rock, and
I
that's
know.
where
Yeah,
the
he just
last.
keeps getting bigger and bigger.
I feel like maybe one day we're gonna have to watch Reacher, but
Oh my
yeah,
god, Pilot Pod on Reacher.
Violet Pod Reacher. But that, I think, if you like procedurals, which I don't particularly like them, but I also don't hate them as much as the Bridgerton universe. That's something I genuinely just don't like. But I do. If someone forced me to watch a procedural, I'll be like, yeah, that's fine. When someone forces me to watch Bridgerton, I'm gonna be like,
You're
that was not for me.
missing out, Kat. It's so funny. I think we were talking the other day about the Queen Charlotte, which is like the Bridgerton spinoff, and we've heard that that's gay, and we were like, we made Kat watch the wrong one.
It was the complete wrong one. Maybe the gay would have helped me on
We made you
to
watch the
survive that.
straightest possible version of Bridgerton.
You
So
really did. You did. But yeah, go see them if you're looking for something that you're like, it's Wednesday night and I don't have to go to bed yet. I
yeah,
want to watch a movie on Netflix. This is
pop
probably
some
for you.
popcorn and watch Glen Powell wear a series of unflattering wigs. I think this could be for
That
you.
that for sure.
I love just like she's all that makeover where he like takes off his glasses and like slicks back his hair, and everyone's like, he's hot.
I'm like, wasn't he always hot?
He's been hot the whole time. Like we all have eyes, my guy.
I especially like
Good.
the students who's like, my teacher's hot. I'm like, but he
Oh,
always was.
I mean, he was wearing unflattering glasses, but you could see that he's hot. I mean, you didn't need the glasses.
I thought that was definitely something I was like thinking of when I was watching it. I was like,
That
I
made
love
me laugh.
movies in that way.
It would have been even better if he like took off his glasses at one point and they like slow mo and there were like sparkles in his hair, you know, like an anime character.
I would have loved it. Yeah, because also like I mean there are actors that maybe you're like, oh yeah, like you can make him look real
Yeah.
ugly, and then he did this makeover.
I don't
But
feel like Glen Powell is one of them. He's just
no, Glen Powell's not.
like a traditionally handsome man. So it's like really hard to like ugly him up. I don't care what unflattering haircut they gave him. I was like, yeah, that dude's still hot. Like we can all see that.
Yeah, you have to maybe put some prosthetics on his face to try
Right.
to do that, and they didn't even try to, which I'm happy
So,
because I don't think it would have turned out that great. But maybe even more makeup. They didn't.
yeah.
They're just like no, just the wig.
No, they give him some weird teeth at a couple of points when he's playing some of his Hitman characters, but I was like, I feel like the teeth are a little bit overkill.
I agree. I think because it was so short, it was fine. Because it's like
Yeah,
maybe you saw
exactly.
the
It's like,
Hitman for like 2 seconds.
yeah, no, I thought this was a fun one. Am I gonna like revisit it and go rewatch it over and over
No,
again? No, no.
it's
I
not.
mean,
Am I okay?
I was
Am
gonna
I
say,
okay?
am
Probably
I okay?
would.
Am I okay? Is probably gonna re-enter the rotation
Mm.
as like a fun watch. This one I thought was good. I'm glad I watched it. I had a good time. It'll probably be like a 3.5, 4 stars on my
Mhm.
letterbox. But yeah, I don't know that I'm gonna like go back into the archives and pull this one out very often.
I also put it 3.5 on my letterbox. And right now, just because there has not been a lot of great movies out, it's number 6 on my top 10, but we'll see.
Oh, oh
We'll see
wow.
how things go. Madam Web is above it. Don't even ask me why. Because Madam Web is like I had a fun time with it. It
I
was
do,
so
to be
bad.
fair, I do really wanna watch Madam Web, especially now that it's, like, free and I don't have to go see it to a theater to see it. I feel like it's really enticing me from the Netflix. I've heard so many things. D do you know why they ADR'd that one guy's every single one of his lines in?
I wish I
Has
had
there been a
the
backstory on
facts. I'm guessing maybe if I'm guessing correctly,
this?
I don't think English was his first language, so I'm guessing
Oh.
maybe like it was hard to understand him. But I mean nothing one. Then maybe hire a different actor, I guess. I don't know what you
Yeah,
were
what
trying there.
that's crazy. Yeah, no, I saw a clip. I heard about the fact that the ADR was really bad, and then I saw a clip of it, and I went, "Oh my god, it is as bad as everybody said." And then I was like,
Their
"Oh my god,
segments are
I
horrible.
absolutely have to see this movie, this film, this cinema."
Cinema. I love a good bad movie, which is why it's
Me
so
too.
high. Like, and it's also Spider-Man related. Like, it's just such a fun bad movie, and then which is why it's higher than Hitman because this is like it's a fine movie. But would I remember it? No. Will I be talking about Madam Web for another decade? Hell yeah.
The sad thing is, like, Madam Web is 100% gonna become a cult classic. Like, you could
Because it
see it happening
is.
already. You know, her mom was in the Amazon researching spiders when she died.
My favorite part of that movie, and you'll get it when you get to see it, is like it, yeah, sure, the meme of the monologues or the ADR, but I just love that they're in the middle of the movie, she steals this taxi. And the whole movie is like she's driving taxis into the forest. It's so funny. And there's a diner in the middle of the forest, and she's still in, like, the taxi, and it's like this taxi, like, is in the final boss battle. It's like everywhere.
Yes.
The
The taxi is a
love it.
beloved character at that point.
Someone said this, like, before anyone saw this movie, like, no one when it was in theaters. I feel like more people are watching it now because it's on. I think
Yeah.
it's on
Oh, yeah. I think
Disney
it's
Plus, wherever it
on
is.
I think it's on Netflix, actually, because
Netflix.
I was on Netflix the other day, and it's in, like, the top 10. Like, people are either unironically loving it or very ironically loving it, but
I am
they are watching a lot of it.
I am ironically loving it, and again, I just love those type of movies. But yeah, someone said that it's like, oh, if they ever released a Madam Web action figure, it'd be her in the taxi cab next to her.
Oh my god.
I was like, that's
That's so
fun.
good.
But I do recommend the movie because like, I don't think everything has to be cinema to be enjoyable. Sometimes you want something to be so bad that it's like, wow, I had such a good time watching that. And that's how I feel about Madam Web. But I feel like there's been a lot of generic movies out this year, and a lot of movies that just haven't moved the needle for me. And that's sad. But I recommend Challengers if you're looking for a really, really good movie. That's my number one right now.
That's been on my list.
Challengers.
That's been on my list. I really want to watch that.
That's really good. That's for my favorite movie of the year. So I'm hoping Deadpool is good. I could put that
Me
high.
too. Me too.
That's my hope. But let's start wrapping this thing up. So Morgan, what do you got going on besides going to see Madam Web this week?
I Madam Web high on the list. We're going through a whole Dakota Johnson renaissance as well.
We
Dakota
are.
Johnson
We are.
No, you can also find me on Supergirl Radio, where we are covering my adventures with Superman, and I think we are going to be covering the 3rd and 4th episodes this week, so that should be really fun. The season's been really good so far, and at some point Supergirl's going to be in it. She hasn't been in it yet, but I feel like she's coming. She's coming soon, I think.
The last episode of the season.
I will be so sad if that's what happens, but whatever. I haven't seen episode 4, so watch me be a liar and she like popped up in the last episode. What about you, Kat? Do you have maybe like a Kickstarter going or some events?
Yes, so we have Transphoria up right now. It's doing really well. It's our trans and non-binary anthology. So if you're looking for different genres that has to do with transness, go check that one out. And we do have a couple of prides. We're going to be at New York Pride, Harlem Pride, West Hartford Pride, and Princeton Pride. Those are the 4 coming up. Oh. And then our June is done, and it's been a good June, but very tiring June. So we'll be sad to see it over, but we'll also be happy to sleep. Other than that, that's all that's going on with me. So yeah. Also, I was just thinking the Bear's coming out soon. That's one show I'm really, really excited to return. I'm like, oh man,
me too.
I hope we can do something on the podcast for the Bear.
I'm halfway through season 2 now. We just got done watching the Christmas episode. And I need it like to stare at a wall after that one because it was so stressful. I was like, oh my God. But really well done. So I can't wait to finish the rest of the 2nd season. So I'll be all ready for season 3 when it comes out.
Maybe we could do a season 3 thing. If Amy can't watch it, maybe we'll do a duo. But hopefully, because look, am I going to tell Amy to watch 3 seasons of The Bear? I don't know.
The Bear.
But
that could be a good duo for us the next time we duo.
That could be a good duo. So maybe we'll do something with The Bear.
Nice.
But thanks. Yeah, thank you guys, and stay legendary.